Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing marvelously well. I'm sitting here with the rather wonderful Ricky Damian. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
It's good. It's pretty whistle stop. You're over in town. You're friends with Emiliano.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was just like, hey.
Yeah, let's meet up.
Do it.
I've been following you forever. I love your stuff. And I remember like seeing the videos and this desk and being like, I wonder where it is. And then it's great to be here.
I know.
It's awesome. And the drive here is amazing as well.
You were in Venice?
Yeah, so it's a long drive.
Were you working?
So I came in town because an artist I worked with is called Yebba. Mm-hmm. She's an amazing singer from Arkansas, and she's opening for John Mayer.
Great.
So I was helping her put together the tour, and so I happened to be in town. Then now they left and they went to San Francisco, and they're doing the whole circuit. And I decided to stay a couple more days, catch up with friends like Emiliano. Like I haven't been here for a while because of the pandemic, so
yeah,
it's great that we could make this happen. 100%.
It's incredible. Now you live in London.
I do. I've been there for 10 years.
That's incredible. So you come from Italy.
Yep.
You go to London. Now you told me earlier off camera that you went there because you wanted to get into the British music scene. But how do you break into the British music scene when you're Italian?
Exactly. So, I started playing guitar when I was 6, and that's kind of like how I got into music. Not really paying attention to playing. I was just doing it as an activity. Mm-hmm. And then as I got to like maybe being 11, 12 years old, my music teacher gave me a Queen Greatest Hits. And she was like...
Of course.
This is you're playing it easy. But like, she was like, you're going to love this. Have a listen. And before then, music was something that I knew existed. It's something that you hear in shops and whatever, and the radio and stuff. But it was never like what then becomes for people that actually decide to do this for a living. And it just hit me. I was like, this is amazing. And so then, Queen is obviously a great example of British classic rock. And from there, I expanded to Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Beatles, the whole amazing, legacy of music that the country has made. And so by the time that I could actually, get out of school at age 19 in Italy, I decided that I just belonged there. I had to go there. And so I moved there as soon as I could. I started working in studios at age 14 in Italy. In my town, Treviso, there's a very big facility actually with analog boards, tape machines, Neumann mics and stuff.
Amazing.
So that was kind of like, it's a privilege to be able to see and witness somebody using that equipment, from the corner of the room when you're just assisting, because you just learn so much. And especially with, like tape machines and things, now schools don't even teach that anymore. Right. It's so hard to find them working properly. So to be able to like observe somebody actually master that kind of thing was priceless for me.
How did you get that? 14?
Well, I think this is kind of like, it was ambitious at the time. I had a Pink Floyd tribute band. We were playing The Wall. We were 15, so you can imagine how that sounded. It was like, but we believed in it so much. It was so good, and we had all the sequence stuff, and we ripped off the stuff from the DVDs and things just for the surround, And we had the ambitious idea to go and record it once. Like that's something you can do. You can go and re-record an album like that. And so that's how I really understood that recording is not just, it's a whole thing. It's an art form and it's a beautiful thing. And I loved it from the first time. And I got into the studio and I was like, what is this? Like, this is amazing. As a guitar player, I guess you get quite geeky in terms of like, pedals, amps. So you are accustomed to liking technology. But when you get into a studio for the first time, I'm sure you remember the first time you walked into something like this and you were like, I love this. I want to know what everything does. So that's how it worked. And I just bluntly asked, I said, can I be here? Can I exist in this, in this building? Can I do anything? And the owner, my friend Andrea, who's my mentor, he was so kind to give me an opportunity to be there. And
did you go after school or you went on the weekends?
I was like not going to school, like every now and then. Not massively, but you know what I mean? Like I was, every time I was not in school, I was there. And sometimes I was there instead of being in school. And that taught me so much because, I guess there was nothing else that I cared about. Mm-hmm. If there was one thing I was sure about is that I wanted to be in the room, which was really fun. And
incredible.
And so by age 19, I was like, that's it. I'm going to move to London, try and pursue a career in, engineering, production, whatever it is. Like, I just want to be in the room making amazing music if I can. And so I moved to London, attended SAE,
right?
Which, in Haggerston. And basically what happened is, again, same approach I had in Italy, I had at a school. I was like, this school costs so much money. It's been a crazy effort for me to attend it. I want to be the best. There were, at the time, great recording facilities at the school 24/7. You know, there was an EVR, an SSL like this. So, you know, for me, it was like, I'm going to live in the school. I'm just going to use it. And what happened is that by the end of the second year, I was writing my dissertation, and the head of audio at the school, my friend Carlos, who became my friend, and he got a call from a producer called Mark Ronson, who, you know, is a nobody right now. Is an amazing British producer. And he was looking for an engineer that was, you know, fresh out of school, but also could be, you know, in some way, you know, proficient or, you know, familiar with analog recording, because Mark is, you know, is very, very fond of tape machines and, you know, that retro sound and the 60s sound. And so I was the only kid. I was the only one that knew how to use tape. And so, and so I got the job.
Your work in Treviso in the studio there really helped you.
Yeah. And, you know, you never know these things. Like you stumble upon something and you decide to pick it up, and then you never know how that's going to be helpful in your career later on. And that was the biggest realization for me. It was like, had I not spent enough time in that room really trying to get to the bottom of it, maybe I would have never got the gig. You know, it's insane. And thinking about it, it was pretty. But
you have to also be good, because, you know, you wouldn't work with him for more than a day if you weren't.
No, of course.
So what was that like? You get a phone call, you go and meet him.
I go meet him. At the time, he had a room in Tileyard, which is the studio complex north of King's Cross, and beautiful studio. MCI board, MCI 500, legendary board. They recorded, not on the specific one, but I think that was the board they recorded Back in Black.
Right.
Which, you know, obviously amazing, stunning record.
Brian Eno loved them. My friend Dave Jordan told me that they would go to studios that had MCIs. I think Talking Heads, Remaining Light was done on it.
They had them on Criteria as well. We had a little poster of a newspaper that was advertising the board being installed at Criteria. So I didn't know it at the time, but it, you know, looked amazing. He had a Studer A800, a Scully 280 from Sun Studios in Memphis.
Wow.
A lot of
A800 over there.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
MK1. Oh, no,
It's a 1978, yeah.
Those things sounds just amazing. And I think, I mean, the funny thing about that is my very first session with Mark, or one of the very first sessions, was Uptown Funk.
That's a nice way to start.
And I mean, at the time, you don't know what you there's no way to know that song is going to be that big. But I gotta say, I remember hearing it for the first time in the form it was at the time and being like, wow, this is something special. Because, you know, I was in the room with Mark and Jeff Basker, who is another insanely talented producer. And, you know, it was just emotional just to see them, you know, feed off each other, ideas and stuff. And so my first week was kind of like this like trial week of recording to tape. And we were doing a very, you know, very interesting things like vari speeding stuff up and down, just to, you know, like kind of like, you know, Prince would do with the guitars, where you just slow the whole song down, record the guitar, a tone down, and then bring it up so the formants are shifted up and it sounds thinner and a little bit more like pokey. That was insane, you know, and it was kind of like a bit sudden to start like that, but I guess I made it happen, and that's how I got the job.
That's amazing.
That was the first week. And the rest is history.
That's incredible. So, but that song, was that the beginning of the song? Because I read that song took a long time.
It took a long time
to record.
What I think happened is they had cut the kind of like the rhythm track. Like, so Bruno plays drums on the song, and then I forget his bass player's name. Amazing musician. He played bass on it, and so they had kind of like the structure, and they had a scratch vocal and everything. They had done it throughout the weeks prior to that. So what I started doing with Mark and Jeff was recording the keys and the guitars. So that's kind of where I jumped in. And it did take several months more, but you know how it is. You just think and overthink and try and retry, experiment. And then at some point you just go back, you change this, you change that. And at some point you can't do it anymore. And you go, that's it. I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
Did you guys go back to some of the original stuff? You did a lot of work and then decided it was better?
I don't think so for this song specifically. I think it was quite, you know, like, we're not going to move forward until we like this. And at that point, obviously, you know, I'm engineering the session, but I'm also observing a creative process that I had never witnessed, because I had never been in a room with two English-American producers. Yeah. And it was just, every minute of it was just magic. And I think that's what really brought me to like this industry, or, you know, want to be in this industry, is the magic that happens in the room. there's nothing like it, and that's why also like I do mix quite a lot, but I would much rather record a band or record an artist, because there's something about the synergy between the people and just whatever happens in the room that is you can't create it in any other way.
Yeah, when you're mixing, you can get into the technical and you can make everything fit together like an incredible jigsaw puzzle and everything. But there's nothing better than knowing what the musician actually wants.
Yeah, exactly. And then see it happen in front of you, and you're just part of it. And it's just magical. I don't think there's any other word to describe it. It's just beautiful.
So so you finish Uptown Funk, then what happens?
Then obviously, you know, the song goes out and it's incredible success. Obviously, we made the whole album, and Mark was still working on the rest of the songs, which are there's quite a lot of, you know, other very interesting things. There's Kevin Parker that did a song with Mark. Kevin Parker is an amazing musician, amazing everything, artist, everything. And so we worked on the record for that, and then pretty much what happened is Mark kind of like obviously went into promoting the song and doing all the TV shows and stuff like that. And I was the in-house engineer for the London studio at the time. So I wasn't really necessarily traveling with him yet. So there were times where he maybe would have gone for a month. And those are the times where maybe somebody else comes into the studio. And then I met so many people in those years. This is 2015, 2016. I met a lot of the people that I work with today, you know, artists like Sampha, Georgia Smith, Ezra Collective, all these like British acts that are, you know, we're not just collaborators, we're just friends. I made this friendship in those situations because the studio was there. It was perfect because I'm OCD, and, you know, I spent so much time just like making sure everything was fixed. We had a beautiful collection of gear, instruments, and facilities. So it's a privilege to be there. You have to use it. And I didn't need to do anything else in my life. That's what I felt. I just wanted to be in that room, use it, get to know every piece of gear, get to know every little, you know, just experiment, have fun.
Incredible.
And so that's what happened. And, you know, I've worked with Mark ever since. During the pandemic, it's been very difficult, but on and off. I've been a freelance since 2017, but at the time I was his engineer. And, you know, Mark involved me in some incredible projects, you know, from Lady Gaga to Adele to Alicia Keys to, you know, this Yebba album that we did pretty much fully at Electric Lady Studio A, for example. So what happened is that the more I worked with Mark, the more I was being involved in all the projects. And Mark moved to Los Angeles in 2017, I believe, to Sound Factory, Studio A.
Oh, is he still there?
He's not. But we were there for like 17 to the pandemic, pretty much. That's kind of like the time we were there. And basically I was here. I wasn't here as in I never moved here, but I was here all the time. And also Mark, you know, being, you know, he was born in the UK actually, but he was raised in New York. So he belongs to New York. In fact, now that's where he lives. So spending a lot of time at Electric Lady and other legendary studios in New York, I mean, for me, it was just a joy. It's beautiful.
Amazing.
Very beautiful.
I like Studio A at the Sound Factory. I remember I used to go there when it was the Sunset Sound Factory before they sold it. And I think the only thing I hate about it was the parking was dreadful.
It is terrible. I mean, it's a tough area of town, isn't it? It's like there's so much going on. There's only 4 parking spots at the studio for both rooms.
For both rooms, yeah. Then there's that was that the parking lot still there opposite?
The one opposite, yeah.
Dirt parking lot. Yeah.
I think they paved it by now. But it's still like they don't like you almost like, as you know, in music you might go in and out like, hey, I have to go grab this keyboard from my friend.
I think people have to understand it's not like 4 beautiful space parks. It's like once you get 2 cars in, you're blocking everybody in. It's like great rooms though.
Yeah, very much so. And the legacy as well, the history of that place.
It's pretty much the 70s American rock sound, because Peter Asher was in there doing like, Linda Ronstadt, like Peter had it locked out and did like every Linda Ronstadt record in there. And I don't know if they still have the gold records up there. Probably
they do. Yeah, they do.
Oh,
there's some crazy stuff. Jackson 5 recorded in there. Also, Chad Blake was there for a long time.
So wait, there is the one that's the L shape?
Yes, that's A.
Oh, I love that room. Yeah. So did you the piano's at like the small part of the L, and then there's that little like hallway between it, and you crack open the door and stick a mic in there, and it's the best drum sound ever.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a funny room. You know, it's like you look at it and it's like, who thought about this?
Was the API still in there when you were in there?
Sadly, the API moved out as we got in. Because the building was sold. So Sunset Sound, you know, Paul sold the building.
Yeah.
A lot of the mics stayed, which was good.
Great.
There was some really, I mean, before the collection was just outrageous. You know, Sunset Sound itself has an amazing collection, and Sound Factory had just too much. Like, you would never even use all that. So some of it stayed, which was nice.
Great.
But unfortunately, no, the board left.
So what
the
did you
board
guys
in
do?
B stayed. In Studio B, there is still the API. In Studio A, left.
So what did they put in there?
We put in a little Trident console, like a Trident 65, which is like, it was fine. But we had a lot of outboard, which is kind of like, it was mainly more like using a lot of outboard pre's and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the console is more like facility. It's more like auxes and things like that.
That control room's tiny though.
It's so funky.
Yeah, it's like
so funky. And you know what's funny? I don't know if George Osberger designed the room, but we had him come in to tune it. And I think he was just pulling out stories of like, oh, I was here 50 years ago, but like 30 years ago with this person, blah, blah, blah.
No, it might have been 50 years ago.
Maybe.
In the 70s, yeah, that would be.
He's a legend. Absolute legend. Because I think obviously the big main speakers were the Altex.
Right.
Well, I don't remember what model it was, but that, you know, it's kind of like a George design kind of thing. So
That's
control room is tiny. It's very tiny. Compression ceiling, which is like doesn't work. So they gutted it out, put fabric.
Yeah.
It's funky. That's all I can say. It was funky.
Yeah, it's weird though, because it's all like vinyl tile floor, and you put the drums in the bottom of the part of the L.
Yeah.
You crack open that door, stick it's an amazing drum sound.
Yeah. And we had a lot of fun, you know, like we made some great record. We made a Mark record, but also like soundtrack stuff. We did a lot in there. And it's funny, if you turn the big lights on, it looks like a hospital or something. Yeah. Because it's painted, as you said, the floor, it's painted white. But then as soon as there's a lot of like spots and colored lights. It was a vibe. It was a good time.
Yeah,
and
amazing.
Then the pandemic sadly, you know, hit it. Also, Mark wanted to relocate in New York, which is you know.
And now he's working out of Electric Lady?
No, so he got back his studio from back in the day where he did the Amy Winehouse stuff, which is amazing. And I only went to see him the other week, and it's crazy. Like, he was telling me the stories of when he basically cut there some of even the earliest demos with Amy. So you can feel the kind of like the energy in that room. It's like when you walk, you know, when you, not to make the comparison like that, but when you walk into Abbey Road Studio 2, you know exactly there's something going on there. There's a presence, there's the smell of the wood and things like that. It just felt like that, which is beautiful.
Great.
So that's it. Yeah. Mark is back in New York.
So you went freelance in 2017.
Yeah, but still worked a lot with Mark, you know, but also did quite a lot of other stuff, which is great. Started mixing a lot, started producing, you know. And I think it's the most important thing of this industry today is that you can't, it's great if you're amazing at one thing, but at the same time, you are required pretty much to be great at everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of music production now expands kind of like before and after the existence of an album. So there's so much like pre-production and, you know, writing, but then also after, like, I found myself doing a lot of like, kind of like tour production, if that makes sense. So
it does, yeah.
Making a record, finishing the record, release everything, and then go with the band or the artist again in the studio or in a rehearsal facility and make this work for live, which I think is beautiful. Like, I love the evolution of you know, of the process, and it's great. It's just so important. So I had the chance to do this with Sam Smith. I did it with Yebba. I did it with Mark, obviously, you know.
Which Sam Smith record did you do?
I didn't do the record.
Yeah.
I started working with Sam at the end of, I would say it's album 2. So The Thrill of It All. They had just finished that record, and I started working with the crew basically, and follow kind of like that tour. And then I've been working with Sam ever since. We did a lot of recording during the pandemic. Actually, we did a lot of recording, writing, production in their studio. We built a studio in their house, and yeah, I mean.
Do they have a new album coming out?
I don't know if I can say anything about this. So, I don't know. Maybe not.
You've been recording, so maybe there'll be an album.
But there's always recording, right? So it's just you have to. Yeah, it's like photography. You're always capturing something.
Right, writers write.
But
record.
But Sam is amazing.
He's an incredible voice.
One of the not only the voice. Like, I've hardly ever met a writer that is so prolific. Like, I've been in a room with Sam where they write 5 songs in a day, and not like ideas, like full songs. It's beautiful to witness. You know, like when somebody is that talented, it's just it doesn't feel like work ever. So and then obviously the voice that is like no one else.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. So what happened? You go freelance. You're still working with Mark. How do you? I mean, you've made these relationships obviously with working with other artists. Give us a little bit of how it all sort of developed from there.
That was kind of like the time I started traveling a lot because Mark moved here, and that's kind of it's obviously one of the most beautiful things. And we were talking about this earlier, that I'm a really big believer that music and geography are so connected, and that Pink Floyd would have never made Dark Side of the Moon in LA, and then Tom Petty would have never made the songs that he made if it was in Manchester or something like. And I do love that, and I love how creativity is affected by this, by the season, by the weather, and so I think from that point I basically started. I mean, it was a bit insane. I was just doing 60 international flights per year, like kind of like on both sides of the pond, but it just felt so like energetic because you were always jumping onto something new. And I started working and started collaborating with a lot of artists, both in the UK and here. I've made 2 Sampha records by now. One has come out, one maybe one day will come out. Sampha is this amazing artist from London, and very experimental, incredible voice, incredible piano, keyboard skills. And, we spend a lot of time doing, again, a lot of tape stuff, a lot of taped experimentation. I worked a lot with this artist called Georgia Smith. She's incredible. She's a great, I've almost worked on everything she's ever done from when I met her in 2015, in those years where I was in London at the studio. And then, worked a lot with some of the jazz scene in New York, which is great. Sorry, not New York, in London, which is great. Like with a band called Ezra Collective, for example. And they're super cool because they're like, it's a full-on jazz quintet, drums, bass, piano, sax, and trumpet. But then their roots are everywhere. Like they have hip-hop chops, they have jungle chops. So it's making music with them is just fun because it is kind of like the old school recording where you could record this just to tape and that's it. But then you just go in a little bit more and you add a little bit of production, or you add, you experiment with the sounds, and it's just the beauty of performance. No clicks, like like free, that kind of thing. And then, obviously the beauty of traveling so much and working with so many amazing artists that you build relationships, and you just end up keep coming back. And, this time that I came back here was great because I haven't been here for 3 years or 2 years or whatever this pandemic was. It's been crazy.
It's been nuts.
So it's almost like, oh my God, it feels like I was here yesterday, but
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And everybody has changed. Everybody's on a different wavelength almost. And it's fun. It's fun. But then, so one of the main things I did from like 18, 19 was making this album at Electric Lady with Yebba. And for whoever doesn't know Yebba, they need to get to know her because she's an insane, amazing artist, singer, and a full-on musician. She's an absolute diamond. And that was a great record because she's a big fan of D'Angelo and all that kind of like sonic sphere.
Sure.
So we made this record at Electric Lady Studio A with them guys, with Questlove, with Pino Palladino.
Oh, wow.
Jane Poyser. Like we had all the cool cats in the same room to tape. And that, Mark produced that record, and I engineered it, and I did a bit of production as well. And it's one of those. It was absolutely crazy. Being in that room with those people is just crazy.
What a rhythm section, Questlove and Pino.
I don't know if it gets any better than that. And they are really like just amazing people. Like besides the musicality of it,
Pino's an insane player. He's also like 8'2" and his hands are about this big.
It's so amazing. And
I met him in real life, and I'm 6'1", and I'm like shaking his hand. I'm like, his hand's like...
So it's like hey.
wrapping my hand.
Yeah, and
what a player.
He's, Pino, he's
Welsh.
He's Welsh.
He's Welsh, Italian.
Oh, Welsh. Italian origins. And I remember when I first met him at Electric Lady, he was... I obviously, every time I know that somebody's even a little bit Italian, I just go like, hey, I'm Italian. Like, do you speak? And we didn't really even get to chat. But this time when I saw him, because he's playing with John Mayer, but he's playing with Yebba as well on the show.
Wonderful.
It was like, ciao Pino, come stai? It was like, he was the one that started actually the conversation. And we spoke about, where he comes from, where his dad comes from. And it's amazing. It's such an incredible human.
Yeah,
and also a great bass player. My God,
it's crazy that him and Alan Limbrick grew up together, and so Alan ended up playing with like Roger Waters,
Right.
and like they just come from this little town in Wales, and then they go off and like kind of change the world. It's pretty
sometimes
awesome.
it's like that, and I love that. I love that, you know, somebody has gone through a path in their life where they grew up in a whatever, you know, in the middle of nowhere, and then they end up, you know, playing on some of the best records ever made.
I don't know if you've ever seen, I think it's on YouTube, there's the Platinum Party. So he has the party when his record goes platinum, and it's just loose VHS film, and he gets up on stage and just does a Stevie Wonder medley.
Wow.
And all you hear is
just by himself.
Just
CP70
mode. And you just realize this guy has got depth. Like he's the real deal.
I mean, I'd never met him in real life. I don't think I would. I mean, it's too much. He's so good. There's a video on YouTube that Yebba plays all the time, and it's him and Questlove.
Right.
On a stage. I can't even remember. Like, it's literally like a video from the phone. And it's D'Angelo on the, I think, CP70 or CP80, and probably Moog bass or Rhodes bass, and Quest playing. Even from the phone, it's like the tightest, the most, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just these people are gifts from the planets, and it's amazing they exist. And, you know, every time you get even remotely close to working with these people, it's just it's a blessing. It's why it feels amazing to work in an industry like that. It's why it's a privilege.
Yeah. So you're going to go out, and are you going to go out with Yebba and Dan?
It's all done. It's all done.
Yeah.
So we started rehearsal in New York, and you know, it's interesting because we made the record in a certain way and with a certain band, and now 3 years later, because the record was made all before the pandemic. It didn't come out until 2021, but then, you know, nobody has seen each other for so long. Right. So it was first and foremost a great way to come back to it. But then she has an incredible band. She has Nate Smith on drums, Pino, her guitarist Charles Mayers, amazing guitarist, and then James Francis on keys, which, I mean, he's just next level. He plays with Pat Metheny. He's a 26-year-old amazingly talented keyboard player. So it's a super tight band, and the challenge was like, let's just sit down, find the set, make it work, you know, and just make it great. And it's not like there's a lot of work to do with players like that, but you know, it's like more like introducing playback if needed, just clicks or BVs or things like that. She actually. The reason I say she's a full-on musician is that she's not just a performer, like a singer. Yeah. I built her a little pedal board, and she's doing all her delays and stuff live on stage, and it's beautiful to see. It's like, you actually don't see that quite a lot, I think, and everybody's like, oh my God, what is that delay? And she's just doing it on her own. It's wonderful. It's super fun. Yeah. And it's a great show to watch. So, you know, we put it in shape. I was with them throughout the whole process, and then we did the first few shows, 3 gigs at the Forum here, which I'd known.
My head's a bit buried in the sand. I don't know what's going on half the time, but I do know he's gone back on the road, John Mayer.
Yeah, I mean, he had a ridiculous band: Greg Fillinganes, Pino, Steve Ferroni.
That's ridiculous.
Like, it's pretty. It was amazing to see them play. It's like.
He's had everybody. He had Steve Jordan. Now he's got Steve Ferroni. He's just like,
all the Steves.
All the Steve drummers that there are.
Yeah. I mean, and by the way, I love John Mayer. Continuum is, I know this sounds cliche because everybody loves Continuum, but for me, it's one of my top 5 records that
I mean, it was a breath of fresh air at the time.
Oh my God.
I mean, he's the gateway drug for so many kids, because at that time, guys wanted to learn to be guitar players. And there's somebody playing like a bluesy, jazzy, funky, soulful music. And it's the best thing ever, because then they go back and discover where he got it all from.
Exactly.
You know, in just the same way that, you know, Clapton, all those guys did in the 60s, everyone went back and discovered the blues. I mean, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, you know, the most beautiful thing was to actually see the audience being so many generations mixed together. You know, you had my parents' generation, my generation, you had the kids. I like that. And, you know, it's funny. I think like the kids are discovering that kind of music or guitar-based music again right now. Yeah. Which is funny. Like, guitars have not been trendy for a while, have they?
No.
But I feel like
particularly in America.
Yeah, but it's coming back so much.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it in the charts as well, but I like guitars.
Well, I like there's a good emphasis on ability to play. So I think that people like when they can see a musician who can really, really play their instrument. Because I also love, punk, and I love just like if you can write an amazing song with 3 chords, then absolutely that's just as important to me. But at the same time, I enjoy the musicality, and I think that people, because the ability to learn is so much easier now. Like if you want to learn anything in life, just go online and within 5 seconds, you can get information that may have taken 10 years before to get to. Yeah. So people are consuming that and they're finding these incredible musicians and they're inspired, and then they can find out how to, what is that? Oh, that's a mode? Oh, okay, what do I do? It's beautiful.
It's pretty
great
amazing.
time.
I wish I had that when I grew up. I mean, I guess everybody wishes that.
Yeah.
But I remember when it was like, trying to learn a solo or something and be like, I have no idea. Like you read a tab and it's like, no, the tab is wrong.
Tab's terrible.
Tab's always wrong anyway. Wrong
Easy
key.
guitar book. And they make all the chords like G, C, and D, and you're like, that's not a D.
Just 3 notes per chord, no sevenths, nothing. And it's an amazing tool, and that's why I love what you do as well. It's
thank you.
It's the way you can reach people and the way you can in a split second get to learn how to do something. I think it's amazing. Technology helps, obviously, but
absolutely.
I love people that dedicate their life or their time to do this. So
it's amazing.
Kudos to you.
Thank you as well for what you do. Now, technical stuff. Do you work in Pro Tools? Do you work in?
Of course.
Oh well,
Pro Tools is the one. I mean, I started on Pro Tools 5, which looked very gray.
Yeah, I started on 4, I think 4.3 or something like
that. And I think it's weird that I started on 5 because I'm relatively young for 5.
Yeah, you're very young for 5.
Because I'm 28 now. So, but that studio in Italy.
I was about 28 when 5 was new.
Okay, well, so then the problem here is that studio had Pro Tools 5 only when I started working there.
Ah, I see.
Which looked so gray and Beat Detective still smoked a cigarette. Do you remember that?
Oh, did they have that? Oh, I think 5 was when it came out with Beat Detective. It was the first one.
And it had a little icon of this detective, like a little drawing of the detective, like smoking a cigarette. I will never forget that.
I remember the smoking cigarette. Yeah.
It's funny. So Pro Tools, absolutely. I now currently I have a studio. I built my own studio in my house as of the pandemic because that's what you do.
Where do you live?
In Holloway.
In Holloway, nice.
Yeah. So I moved there literally a week before the world shut down. So that was perfect timing. And I always wanted to before I was traveling so much that I never really had a spot. I was always either, using Mark's studio or using any studio that I could rent to do my things. But I never really had my room. And, there's a beauty to having your space and your setup, and, it just makes it easy. So before I even knew what the pandemic was going to be, I was trying to move into a house with an extra bedroom where I could do a little setup, nothing fancy. But as things got worse, it was pretty clear that was going to be my studio, my source of income for the foreseeable future. So I went kind of like full on and did the acoustics and got all my gear from LA and from Italy and from everywhere I had gear sent, and built my room, which was...
What do you have in your room? What's your setup?
Funny enough, I don't have a lot because sometimes you don't need a lot, but it's, Pro Tools based room.
Yep.
Production desk, output desk, with my vocal chain, which is Tube Tech, as in BAE 1084 into the Tube Tech, which I love. I've had them for years, and it's just what really works.
So BAE 1084.
1084, mic pre, MEQ. So channel strip into the Tube Tech, and I have a
CL1B.
CL1B.
Yeah, good.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's anything.
No, it's fantastic. What's your preferred mic?
I have a Flea 47.
Okay, nice.
And I think I got that because at the time I bought that a few years ago, and it's great. I think it's a really good. By all means, every 47 sounds different.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There isn't really a. There's
an industry standard. No?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think at the time I probably used it a couple of times. I found it in a few studios and I really liked it. I think it's also, the price point is great for what it is. So I got that. I then later on did a massive shootout, as you know, one of those crazy things where you try.
I've done them.
I'm sure you've done more than I have for sure.
Well, and either way, I know that what it's like.
It's amazing. I think it's actually quite eye-opening. And I did find that probably my favorite mic made today is the new Telefunken 251.
Oh, you like that? Good.
Like the new one actually is doesn't make me ever feel like I would have to get the vintage one or rent it or whatever, because I had a stereo pair on loan for like a couple months, so I recorded everything I did for those months with those. And I know gear is a tool. It doesn't necessarily create something. You could, if somebody is amazing, you could put a 58 in front and it will be amazing.
And
that's
lots
kind
of incredible vocals work done with
Bono
58.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I have to say that all the stuff that I did in that month, it's just got one more notch of magic. I don't know what it is.
Wonderful. What about your speakers?
I have ATCs, 25s.
ATCs, okay.
Yeah. That's kind of like I kind of grew up with it, which is funny to say, but...
Yeah, start off as a teenager with ATCs. It's a nice way to start.
Exactly. No, I started with 1081s and... Is it 1081? No. 1031.
1031.
Sorry, Genelex. Yeah. So too many numbers.
My Genelex is somewhere over there, but...
Which is the classic, right? 1031s and NS10s.
NS10s,
That's what the studio in Italy had.
Yeah.
But I think since I started working with Mark, he had ATCs and we kept having ATCs.
Yeah.
And I do love ATCs. Like every iteration of ATC I think is amazing. The 25s seems to be kind of the sweet spot for me. I prefer them over the 45s, which is the twin speaker. Also, I think they're very forgiving even if you have a bad room. Luckily, my room is not too bad. Like, it's a bedroom, so you know you're gonna come into some sorts of issues, some sorts of modes. You know, you will. But even with the treatment and everything, they behave perfectly. I don't feel I'm in a bedroom. I feel like I'm in a studio. I can trust them. You know, they're great speakers, and it's a great company. You know.
Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah.
And then what else? I have a bunch of. I have like.
What's your interface?
I have a Antelope Goliath, which you don't really find them around that much. I think it's an incredible piece of gear because it's...
We've done great reviews on Antelope. We always get fantastic results on them.
I've collaborated with Antelope for a long time now, and I always loved everything from the very first Orion. Is it the Orion, the 32 channel? Yeah. I always thought that they were just one step beyond. But the Goliath is just insane. You know, the
How
amount
many
of...
inputs does it have?
It's 32 I/O, but then the inputs is like 8 instrument, 16 mics. The others are aligned. Then you have, obviously you have your Madi HDX, Thunderbolt. Like the things you can do, reamp outs, 2 headphone outs. Like, I love it. In fact, we should tell Antelope to keep making it because I don't know if they're making a new one.
Oh, wow. No,
I don't know. I haven't heard back.
Our reviews of them have always been absolutely superb because the way I review stuff, as I'm sure you're aware, is I just plug it in and start recording a band.
Use it.
Yeah, use it. And their stuff is really good. And I do like the things they give you for free, some of the amp emulations and everything.
Yeah. It sounds great.
Yeah.
I think it's a brilliant piece of technology.
Yeah, great.
I think if I didn't have that one, I'd probably have way more pre's. Because I do run all my keyboards, all my synths through the kind of like built-in DIs, which is
great.
It sounds great. It's hardwired. And I made myself, I have also a Satori, which is their monitor controller. And I kind of made an output where it's everything that I have in the studio open, which I think is important. So, by the time an artist or even myself, I'm reaching for a synth, I just click a button and I can hear every piece of gear or every instrument, which I think is quite important today,
Yeah.
With the immediacy and how quick ideas come and go.
Yeah.
Because humans don't have patience anymore. We got so comfy with technology that our attention span is
if you lose the internet for 1 minute, you're just like, the internet's down.
Yeah, I'm dead. I can't do anything. But, sometimes you need to sort of as an engineer, I think about that all the time. Even when I go and do sessions in Electric Lady as opposed to, I don't know, Metropolis, Rack, whatever. A studio that I don't work at on a daily basis, that's kind of like my first thought. I just make sure that everything is potentially, audible within the span of seconds.
Right.
Because sometimes you just, somebody's reaching for an instrument, it's already up. It's already open on Pro Tools. I'm already recording, kind of thing. So I kind of made that studio that way, and I think it's great. I have 3 of my favorite synths. I have a Prophet 5, a DX7, and a Juno 106 in there, which I think, you can do whatever you want with those 3 synths. Yeah,
very, very different synths.
They aged incredibly well.
I like DX7. I remember when DX7s when they were new. Anyway, but DX7s, we used to, the thing about them was after a while of using it for a year or two, we got kind of bored because The sounds are a little thin, you know. They're really good for pedals.
They're so good.
Yeah.
God. In fact, that was the whole thing. And then also, I somehow found on the internet a gazillion batches of presets that you can just throw in with C6. And in there, I found some...
You mean the cartridges that you used to put
No, actual C6 like files. And so if you have a MIDI interface or USB to MIDI, you can just play them in and load them on the internal memory.
Oh, wow.
And mine is modded, so I have 4 banks inside. Right. I bought it like that. It's great. Yeah. But what the best thing was I actually found the Toto patches. Because I think they would have used them to tour. They were actually advertised on the internet. Like I found where they come from. I don't know who eventually translated them into a file, but they sound like the songs. Like they would have probably programmed those to tour as opposed to maybe bringing the CS80s or whatever they used on the record. Yeah. And so it was kind of like fun to go through a keyboard that normally you know how it sounds, like the FM sounds, and just make it into something else. Plus running it through pedal, it's the best.
They respond through guitar pedals so well.
So well.
Because they're almost like a DI sound. You know, the pianos are kind of dong, 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 and it's like so pure. Yeah. So can sound a little weedy on their own. Put it through a distortion pedal or whatever, and suddenly it's like, wow, and you're like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah. I put, I love Strymon pedals, and so I have the sort of like the 3 big guys, the, what is it, Mobius Timeline Big Sky kind of thing. They're always with the synths, like on the patch base. So at any time, because even the Prophet 5, which is probably my favorite synth, even in terms of like the discography that was made with that synth, between like Kid A to The Wall, or you know any album, is probably my favorite synth. It's still a mono synth.
Sure.
Which sometimes you just need, you can obviously, yes, you can put a plug in, you can widen it, you can do, but there's something about running it through pedals that, you're committed to that. Mm-hmm. And I guess we go back to the usual thing that every engineer says, which is like commit.
Yeah,
just do your thing, be confident, get your sounds, and if you make a mistake, if you fuck up, you won't do it the next time. But at least you're recording with intention.
Yeah,
you're making choices where at the time you're supposed to make them.
It's the best thing for creativity because you get an incredible bed. Yeah. Then the next thing that goes on takes all of that into account, etc., etc. There's nothing worse than opening up a song with 150 tracks that doesn't make any sense.
Just everything is basically, we'll deal with it later. No, I mean, I obviously learned. This came from the limitations of the time. That's why you had to commit to things, because you had 8 tracks. You had 16 track, you had,
Even 24 seems so antiquated now. But when I was a kid, 24 tracks was like, wow! Because I started on 4 track. Right. And then, people, they would remember there's 8 track cassette. Mm-hmm. And then we had an 8 track 1/4 inch, then an 8 track 1/2 inch, and a 16 track 1/2 inch. And the first time I ever went to a studio with 24 track, I was like,
this is luxury.
I've made it. We got 24 tracks.
There's some beauty to that, I think. Yep. And I was lucky to really get to experience it in a way that
10 years ago was full-blown digital revolution.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think today, even more than 10 years ago, people love to go back to those kind of things.
Right.
I think,
that makes sense.
I remember when cassettes were around. I think I'm young, but I'm not that young, where I remember, having cassettes. I remember recording stupid things on cassettes when I was a kid, when I was like 3 and I had a portable recorder or whatever. Yeah. But for the kids today that were born in this digital era, to discover not only that it was so different back then and life was different, but the sound was different, it must be so exciting. Yeah. And I'm sure that's why, it's kind of fueling back. And the first thing that a kid that wants to be a producer does now is buying a Tascam 8-track or something like that, or a Porta Studio or something.
I've noticed over the last 3 or 4 years, all the Porta Studios like doubled and quadrupled in price.
I wanted to get one and I just never did, because I'm like, I'm not spending that much money for that. It's like, it's just inflation in the audio industry is nuts. Yeah. I feel like it's always going to go up and be trendy.
Mics now. Like a good 47 was 13 to 15. I'm seeing them getting 25,000.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It's a bit, it's a bit undoable.
Yeah.
But I think also, I remember being a guitarist in the early 2000s, being a guitarist, just playing guitar. And like the pedal market between then and now has flourished in a way that is amazing. So I think we are in a time.
Like a Klon?
I mean, everybody's making crazy stuff now. Like back in the day, I remember it was like Boss, MXR, Electro Harmonics,
Yeah.
That's kind of like the big guys.
Sure.
And then everything else is boutique or whatever. Now there's 700 companies. It's beautiful. So I think we maybe need less of a vintage 47 today than we would have 10 years ago, which I think is great.
Yeah.
And that's why I, went down the line of, trying to understand how can I replace this? If I don't have a 47, can I deliver the same results? And by all means, you can. I think you can. It's nice when you have it. You can have a bad one.
There's one over there.
I know.
There's one over there, but at the same, and we do use it a lot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you get that singer that comes in on the 47, and it sounds dreadful.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work.
Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the SM7 is the solution to all problems.
Yeah,
I love that.
I've said this many times, so people watching, we did a 21 mic shootout. 12 mics, 21 people.
Right.
So we had 12 mics, and we had, this is a Blackbird, so we had like the 47, like the one that George Massenberg says is the best 47. It's like mint condition. All the way down to, so SM7 and then everything in between. 251, C12, you name it. Slate mic, a warm audio 87 copy, a real 87, a 60, everything you'd expect. And the only two mics that came in everybody's top four were the U47 and the SM7.
That says it all for me.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that, there's things like that. Because there is a bit of a stigma sometimes. You go like, oh, until I have the right gear, I'm not going to get results.
Yeah.
No, you can do it. You can do it. It's all here and here.
Yeah.
It's a game that you play between here,
It was just crazy. And the other thing is that it's how you listen to the music. So we would take like a mic and solo it, and everybody would love it. Because some of the cheaper mics have this like really like ultra high end, and they think, oh, it's beautiful, it sounds airy. You put it into the track, it sounds dreadful, because all you hear is there's none of the body there.
It gets buried, yeah.
And you just hear this wispiness over the top. So, what we think we might like, we have to. And also the thing about a 47 and the SM7 is it takes EQ really well. You can push it and brighten it, or and it doesn't suddenly get super lispy. Well, depending on the voice.
Yeah. There's people that will never work on them, but like there's people.
Do you work with Jamie? Have you worked with Jamie Hartman?
I have actually. Yes. Yeah.
I produced his solo record.
He's so good.
He's such a great writer. Yeah.
So good. I love him. I love him. I love everything he does. He plays piano and guitar amazingly. That's as much as I witnessed.
Yeah.
And an incredible writer.
Yeah, a great writer and a great guy. Well, so when I did his solo record, I've got all these beautiful mics, and he's like, what do you got? I guess I got 47, we've got 87, we've got RCAs, we got C12, and he's like, give me a 414. And I was like, what? He's like, no, I don't sound good on anything but a 414. So I'm like, no, you see this mic? And I started like, blah, 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 name dropping all these big records that were done on it, all these different singers. And he goes up to it and he sounded dreadful on it. I've never heard the 47 so bad. It was all like, it made him sound like he was lispy. And I put a 414 up and it sounded like a 10, like suddenly it was like gold.
It's funny.
It's weird.
You got to match the mic to the person.
Yeah.
And that applies to instruments as well, of course. Yeah. That's one of the things that I love the most. That's why I think recording nowadays is just seen a bit differently in the industry. Like, obviously we have the big mixers, we have the big producers, but recording is an art form that a lot of people maybe don't really discover by looking at the industry from the outside, but it's so amazing. It's so magical. And I'm really, really, really passionate about it. I think it's maybe the thing that I like to do the most.
Wonderful.
For all the right reasons, for the chemistry, the camaraderie, and just the fact that you are painting a picture. You are
amazing.
It's like cooking. It's like put all these ingredients, like moving the mics, go to the market and find the right ingredients. It's the same thing. It's really, really fascinating. I love it.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thanks ever so much. This has been amazing.
Thank you.
Please leave any comments and questions below. And thanks ever so much for watching. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, adio, ciao.
Ciao, arrivederci. Buona serata.
Goodbye.